Hello. It's like now 4:30, almost 5 a.m. on May 3rd, Wednesday. In the first video, I gave an explanation on the progress on the trouble I've been encountering with the development of the mod. Progress has continued. Production has not halted. To sum up the last video, because I want to keep this video brief and concise to the point, I'll be using Fallout New Vegas stuff from the team. I have their permission. The community in general has their permission to use their armor. And then like the weapons, like the 12 meter here. But I'll use that, and then I intend to use some other stuff for it. And yeah, that's basically it for that. And then like I had to set up a new way to release the mod. Yeah, so let's get on with the story part. So I already explained, like, hey, development hasn't stopped. I had to set up a new way to set it up, and I had to figure out how I'm going to get more modders involved and get new art and get art now. So yeah, so that's all set up. And then for the story, this is, it was really difficult because, like I said in the last video, I set up, I had an idea of going from point A to point B to point C, and then like you choose one of your 4 factions, and they'll show up during 2 of the 3 quests before you go to Chicago, and then you go with them to Chicago. Like you could choose 2 railroad agents to go with you, and they would have like their own like little quests, and they could have like dialogue for that. It was basically it. Very, 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 very basic, but I hated that because the reason why I'm making this mod is for me, and I really wanted rich, just juicy story content. So then I was like, all right, I want faction-rich story content. The Institute does not have a lot of Institute stuff. You witness the Institute, but you don't really see a lot of Institute options during Fallout 4, during the war. And you don't see a lot of stuff during, like, the Nuka World quest. They just offer you some Radiant quests, and that's it for the Raiders. And then same thing with the Brotherhood of Steel and the Minutemen. The quest lines are very brief. You'll really get like 2 or 3 quests from each faction, and that's it. You go through those. The quests can be long, but the game's been out for over 5 years, and so 3 hours from 5 years ago is ridiculous. So basically what I did was you're gonna go into a computer, and the computer's gonna ask you questions, and it's gonna ask you who won the war in Fallout 4, and then it's gonna ask you if the Raiders in Nuka World are still alive or not, because I want to include the DLC and the stories of the DLC in the mod. And those are the 2 like biggest things that are going to influence it. One being like if the Raiders are alive, you sided with them. You've enslaved settlements. Cool. If the railroad won the war, you're pro since freedom, but at the same time you're enslaving settlements to Raiders. So you'll do if the Raiders are alive, there'll be a quest line, because I'm developing 3 cities and 1 town so far, if I've counted it. Havoc, which is a city of raiders. Inkwell, which is a port town where boats come in to trade, and where people that are coming into the Commonwealth from the outside will come in to do trades and stuff. They just come in to get their business done. As a matter of fact, the Brotherhood of Steel operates out of Inkwell to get supplies in. It's one of the ways they get supplies in, because there's like 2 or 3 different ways you'll see throughout the mod. And then like I have Junction City, and Junction City is a town of Metro Railroad repairmen and scavengers. They're kind of like Bunker Hill. And Inkwell was founded by ghouls that lived past the pre-war, and they helped build Inkwell, and they were like, so like Vault 111 has a whole bunch of people that had a whole bunch of different jobs and a whole bunch of different backgrounds. They were all cryogenically frozen, but then the Institute killed them all. So they could have been a mechanic, gas attendant, a teacher, whatever, right? Well, you have these schools, and they had different jobs. They had different professions, and they built Inkwell for trade and stuff. They are the most diverse community. Whereas, like, you had survivors that survived the Great War, and some of them are ghouls, some of them are not, and they built Junction for trade. They worked in the emergency repair station for the metro for Boston, because there's emergency repair junction where if a vehicle got damaged, well, if one of the trains got damaged, they go in there for repairs and for maintenance, just regular maintenance. It's a maintenance station, and they survived the war, and they stayed in there, and it started to build a town underground, and it came up a little bit, but they do trades, and they have robots, and they're at war with, well, they have a stalemate kind of thing right now. They pay tributes to Havoc, and there's an overboss who's named Lynx, and yeah, so they have a conflict there between them. But my point is for the story, I switched it from one story and then adding a few NPCs to 4 separate stories that you could choose in the very beginning, and like when the quest starts, and it would just be based on the idea that you didn't finish the war, so all 4 factions are still alive. And then I'm like, that's kind of stupid, because I want the story to take place after the war is over. And another thing I had trouble with the writing was I actually used characters I wanted to make Fallout New York City and Fallout Chicago, but I had characters in the beginning that start both stories. I had one at the beginning of this intro that was for Chicago and New York. It's for the beginning of this other mod too, and I was like, fuck. So I basically, these NPCs will show up based on your choices, and you'll either go to New York or Chicago based on certain things. Like, if you won the war with the railroad, right? Like I mentioned earlier, if the railroad's around and the Raiders and Nuka World are alive, you're siding with the Raiders to overthrow the Minutemen. You're becoming an overboss, so you're gonna have some quests spawn and show up specifically because the Raiders in Nuka World are alive, and the quests will change based on which faction won the war. So with the railroad, for example, I have a quest where, like, during part of the thing, the railroad and Raiders from Nuka World meet each other, and you have to make a decision about some synths that both groups have encountered, and they're in a standoff, and they're waiting for you, kind of, per se, to come in. And then, like, so yeah, if the Raiders are not around, you'll have this railroad storyline, and if they are, the story will be altered to fit the Raiders in it, and you could just ignore the altered storyline, probably. I haven't decided yet, but probably it's your choice. You can choose to ignore it or not, and then just do the Raider storyline. It will be a choice if it's... for a second, I made it sound like it just turns off or turns on. Oh yeah, you can do the Railroad quest line. No, you can't. You can just side with Raiders. That's dumb. I'll have it to where you can get an altered quest line, and you just decide to do it or not do it. It's very simple. I wanted quest givers to be killable, so players can have the option to not do the quest if they don't want to do it. But yeah, so you side with the Raiders, and you do this Ultra Railroad quest line, and then there's a few endings based on that. I wanted some changes. I wanted players to experience what it's like letting the Raiders live, and then you paved the sense, but now Raiders are over the fucking Commonwealth because of what you wanted to do. How does that pan out? I mean, realistically speaking, you never see sense that escape the Institute running into the settlements that are controlled by the Raiders that you gave the settlements to. You don't see that, but that should be a thing. So yeah, something like that. And then, like, there's repercussions for every choice for who won the war. Like, you'll have some espionage quests for the railroad, but at the same time, you destroyed the Brotherhood of Steel, and you destroyed the Institute, and you didn't side with the Minutemen. The railroad saved the Commonwealth, and they got popular enough to where they're out in the open at checkpoints, military checkpoints. So yeah, there's a whole thing with that. So it's basically, I'm still tuning out the story a bit, but yeah, the story has made great progress. The getting stuff together and setting up a framework that's good progress, progress all around. And I'm not showing what the cities are yet or the NPCs in them. I just started doing voice recordings with 2 voice actors a few days ago to record the lines for the Raiders and the Railroad. That turned out pretty good. I have to do a lot more work on that. And so yeah, that's basically all I have to say on the story right now for the first part before you actually get to Chicago. Because when you get to Chicago, there's going to be a few more factions that are vying for control of territory because of what happened in Fallout 3. And so yeah, you're going to meet the Enclave, and they're going to play a huge part. And there's going to be a few Enclave factions that you're going to end up meeting. And spoilers, so this would be the part to turn around if you don't want to listen to it. But for spoilers, okay? President Eden is Enclave that he controlled, that was in the Wastelands, right? And then, like, they turn on each other. You have General Autumn's Enclave turn on Eden's Enclave. Well, I mean, in the base, they turn on each other, robots first, or whatever. So, you have a group of scientists that developed the ED project and several other projects, and those projects were dismantled and turned over to convert for the Hellfire armor, because you had the Dr. Grant in Fallout New Vegas, and he's working on this ED project, or is she? I forgot which one's which. I gotta pause it real quick. You just sorry, 1 second here. My apologies for that. I am not feeling too well. Okay, to sum it up, yeah, there's 4 storylines. They will decide what happens in Chicago a bit, who you go with, who you don't go with. There'll be some new endings to the storyline itself. Like, there's going to be more than one ending. Decided on who won the war. And every faction storyline will try to have a little bit. It'll be short storylines, but they will try to be very rich, very themed towards the faction that they're in. Like, you'll enter a railroad base, and you'll like have railroad shit on the ground, on the walls and shit. So yeah, just to give that flavor for it. And there's 4 Enclave factions, and they each represent part of the Enclave, like the people that believed in General Autumn, the Enclave High Command, the scientists that actually didn't go to the Capital Wasteland and stayed behind, that were forced to work on the power armor projects, and then another faction that I haven't gone into too detail. It'll be a surprise. You guys can expect another update in June, in 4 weeks. I want to say, because I need to visit my grandparents. But I want to say, let me see here, June. June 9th or 10th. Probably the 10th. No later than that Sunday, because it'll be on the weekend. So, yeah. This concludes the thing. I'll try to probably post a video next week to surmount my progress on it. Thank you.